Today I'm going to talk about creativity at the piano. So this is a little different than what I normally post on YouTube, just performances or fun videos. But I put together this little mini presentation for the Creative Teaching Conference this year, and I thought I'd love to share it on YouTube too. In particular, we're going to talk about approaching the piano with a creative mindset. If you are a student, a brand new to the piano, intermediate, even if you're a teacher, but you've maybe have a background of classical music or sheet music and you're trying to become more creative, this is for you. Whether it's for your own playing or for your students or both. My name is Senicz. I teach piano myself from an interest-based perspective, meaning my students just bring to me the music they want to play, the music they love. We listen, we figure things out by ear, we use sheet music sometimes, we make chord charts, we figure out arrangements, and we learn together. So I wanted to begin today by talking about mindset. You may be familiar with this contrast of a fixed mindset versus growth mindset. It's sort of common in academia these days. The fixed mindset is this idea that skills, intellect, talents are set, unchangeable, fixed. They are what they are. Whereas if you have a growth mindset, you think, well, I can develop these things through practice and perseverance. And it's not that you have one or the other, but that you have one with regard to topic A, topic B. So for instance, I might think I'm not good at music, I'm not good at sports. So I can get better at drawing, or I can get better at math. And with that, I wanted you to take a moment to think about something that you in your life today have a fixed mindset about. Is there anything you have a real fixed mindset about, and then something else that you might have a growth mindset about? So pause if you need to. All right, and the reason we're talking about mindset today is it's a very common one when we start looking at creativity. This idea that I'm just not good at creative things. And I've heard so many students say that to me. Whereas a growth mindset is someone who thinks I can get better at creative things. And with that, I want to get into what we mean by creativity, and we'll circle back to this later. So what is creativity? I say it's hard to define, but it's easy to recognize. If you see a creative person, sure, we generally like, oh, that person is very creative, right? One thing that that we usually mean is this idea of bringing something new into being. So whether it's a poem, a piece of music, a painting, a novel, there was nothing someone created, and then there was this work of art. It often involves a sense of playfulness. So we think of painters and musicians as really playing and being experimental as part of that creative process. And it often, we think of this idea of expression or voice, like the person is expressing something unique to them through this creative act. And I wanted to distinguish it from problem solving, which we often lump them together, like creative problem solving. And that is a thing, and we can approach problems creatively, but that's a different act than this idea of bringing something new into being. So just wanted to put that in mind as we go forward. So back to this idea of mindset and putting this into your own perspective. How creative are you on a scale of 1 to 10? Just take a moment to check in with yourself. Where do you rate yourself? So, and I'm going to make this personal because a lot of this is through my own experience, both at the piano and then works and things I've read and studied through other people. So this is me and my sister here when we were little and dressed up, formal for Easter Sunday on the left or at the beach. And we look alike. I'm the older one, but even from not too much probably later than this, you start to get these ideas about who you are. And she was the creative one and I was the academic one. And that really stuck with both of us for quite a long time. And yet when you think about it, all children are creative. So if you look young enough at little children, they love to create things. Whether it's sand, finger paints, a piano, whatever you give them, as long as they're kind of comfortable with the medium, there's no judgment. They just start having fun. Not every kid loves finger paints. Maybe some kids don't like their fingers dirty, but as long as they're comfortable in the medium, they have no problem really being creative and expressive and having fun. And then without worrying about, are they making something great, right? And some adults are highly creative. When we look around our culture, we see them, but also many, many, many adults do not feel creative, right? So something has happened along the way where a lot of us, or either through what we're told or through what we put on ourselves or a combination, it can be as simple as one comment or something that hits you. People then just start to get this idea that they're not a creative person. And yet they were, is my what I am positing. So I love this quote: most people don't quit practicing art because they lack ability or the desire to create. and that's part of my thesis. We all have this desire to create. But instead, they quit because their natural desire to speak is not honored or encouraged. This one's from Forrest Kinney's, one of the books on my list, Creativity Beyond Compare, which I highly recommend if you've made it this far and you're interested in this topic. And we're going to talk a little more as we go on about this idea of honoring voice. All right, so that brings us to the third part, the third topic here, approaching the piano. And my experience is primarily with the piano. I do sing and play guitar also, but piano is really where I struggled the most to get creative. And I think a lot of pianists do because they come from this classical music tradition and sheet music reading from day one. So really, this might apply a little more broadly, but I'm going to speak to it from the perspective of the piano. And probably most of you are as well if you're here. So what barriers or frustrations do you face with your own creativity at the piano? If you don't have any, that's great. Maybe you can quit watching and go sit down at the piano. If you're still here, I'm guessing that you do. If you want to pause again and think about this, then I'm going to talk through several of my own and then how I kind of either overcame or I'm working to overcome them. And by barrier, we all know what that means. There's something that's holding you back. So I'm going to frame the next part of this talk in terms of specific barriers and then what I'm going to call trailheads. And that means, sort of a nudge in the right direction. So to get into each of these, each could be a topic in and of itself that I could spend, a whole presentation on. We're not going to go into that much detail, but I wanted to give you kind of like, this is where you would start, or this is at least where I started, or one idea of where you could start if this is one of the problems or frustrations you've had. So the first one is just this fixed mindset about creativity. So we've already kind of talked about this one, and it's very common. A lot of us just think I'm just not creative. There's no reason for me to try to play the piano creatively. I'm not a creative person. And this is a relatively simple one because awareness is half the battle here. And if you recognize this fixed mindset, every time you recognize it, you can say, wait a minute, that's not true. I can cultivate a growth mindset towards creativity. I am a creative person. I just need to learn how to bring that out. It doesn't happen overnight, but awareness is half the battle. Okay, another common one, a sophisticated musical taste, especially if you've done a lot of classical and you can play very complicated composers, and then you start trying to play something that you are making up yourself. It's not going to sound as good. This was very common. So for me, part of this is really about changing your perspective and starting to go back to a more childlike sense of play and wonder, appreciating simple things, right? This one takes some time, but obviously an example I heard from a student who just first learned her first chord, and she said, this C chord sounds like heaven. And a lot of us like, oh, C major, that's so boring. But it obviously, a major triad can be beautiful, a sus chord, and you kind of have to recalibrate and try to just go back to that child mindset where those simple chords really are, because they are. It's not a trick, right? It's actually, we're the ones tricked. So you have to start simple, and then you can build up more complex sounds as you kind of redevelop musical language from the inside. And then changing perspective, another way to do it is just to try different instruments. For me, playing the guitar for a little while when I just got frustrated with the piano really helped. Suddenly didn't matter that I was just playing simple chords. I started writing songs, and it was really eye-opening. And then I would take those back to the piano, so that can help as well. And number 3, doubt and skepticism about your ability. And this is more the idea like, I'll never be as good as X. Why would I write music? I'll never be as good as Chopin, or your favorite composer, your favorite artist. Why do it if you won't be as good as that person? And this is where that idea of voice comes back into play. We all have a unique voice, and we all have something to say. And there's really no point or value into that comparison. You're just doing it for yourself. So if you can acknowledge that, that's really, I think, a help in this one. Or you can say, make your own kind of music. All right, number 4, this one is very common for pianists too. Gosh, what if I play a note that doesn't sound good? This fear of wrong notes. And if you've been in a lot of traditional piano lessons where we try so hard, to follow the music and not play the wrong note, this one can be especially very deeply ingrained. So if you're creating and improvising the piano, who says you have to like it? It's really not important. There is no wrong note. It's more about noticing what you like and what you don't like. There's some of those jokes, like if you play a wrong note, just play it again and make it sound like you meant it. And sometimes that actually can work, right? But it's also this idea of just like, you're not always trying to make something perfect or beautiful. You're just creating and seeing what happens. And I put the headphones here because if you're self-conscious about this, it can really help just to go into a private space with headphones and you're just doing it for you. You don't have to like everything. But if you do really like something, notice it so that you can do it again. And here's a related quote from Bill Evans, one of my favorite jazz pianists. Despite the fact that I'm a professional performer, it's true that I've always preferred playing without an audience. And I put this here because I think it's because of that ability to just purely enjoy the moment without worrying about whether you're making a beautiful sound or not. I think that speaks to me here. All right. Number 5, overwhelmed by options. So this one is sort of more of a practical barrier. You sit down at the piano, there's 88 keys. It's very hard to be creative with so many options. So this is where the idea of creative constraints is your best friend. And there are all kinds of ways to do this, lots of resources you can find. But the primary idea is you got to have a lot of limitations. They feel like the opposite of creativity, but actually they allow you to be more creative because we're not worrying about so many things at once. So you could limit notes. So like 1, 3, 4, 5, for example. That's a great one. How much can you do with just those 3 notes? And you can move them all over. You could keep them in one place to start. You can move them all over the keyboard if you're comfortable. Put them in different keys. It's actually a great exercise. If you've never done this, like go try it. When you're done with this, you can limit rhythms. You can stick to a chord progression. I've got some more ideas in the practical section for you. So just don't be afraid to give yourself constraints. Barrier number 6. This one is the idea of there's a disconnect between maybe your ears and your mind and then your hands. So like maybe you hear something, but you don't know how to find it on the piano. Also very common for folks who grew up just primarily reading sheet music. And this one is a little more difficult, but it basically involves retraining your mind, right? To right now, if you've always read and then played, the way your brain works is sort of like there's a path from a note on the page to your hands. And you have to start playing without notes on the page and getting used to what you hear and how to find it on the piano. And just doing it over and over again will help you. So don't use music, pick out simple things by ear and just start going. It's a slow process, but it does work. This is a very related one, lack of musical fluency. My improvisation just feels random or unmusical, and especially if you're highly musically trained, this can be frustrating. So this is very much related to being able to play what you hear in your mind, the previous one, but a few additional tips are just always try to be intentional, even if it means, and it often will mean, you have to greatly simplify what you're playing than what you might imagine or be capable of with your fingers. You can use your voice, like sing first and then try to find the melody, and playing along with other people or just with music also will help you kind of speed up this journey. It just takes time and patience. And finally, I think when you start opening up your practice to more than just like learning songs from sheet music, it gets really, it can get overwhelming. How do I know what to practice? So there's no perfect answer. I like to work on whatever motivates me. So each day, a lot of my practice is just what I feel like doing that day. But it is helpful to kind of keep a list of all the projects and ideas and things you've got going on. Maybe use a practice notebook or a journal. Make sure you're rotating through things. Sometimes I avoid one particular thing and then I want to go say, well, am I scared of that? Why have I not done this thing? So just kind of keep yourself honest, but don't worry too much about, doing everything every day. It's just not practical. And kind of to wrap it up, a lot of what I learned when I first started trying to teach more in the interest-based method instead of just from method books was from my own guitar lessons. So, a traditional piano, a student comes and plays, they get critiqued. We're reading sheet music from day one. We play these high-stress recitals. Whereas guitar lessons, on the other hand, often it's just like a student and teacher having fun playing together. They don't use a lot of written notation. You might make a little chord chart, and that's it. And then it's more about performance opportunities. kids playing in bands together or just getting up and playing, but it's more of a casual performance opportunity than the high-stress piano recital. Or I like to summarize it like this: show up, have fun, make music, get better. So I wanted to end with some specific ideas. I promised you some practical tips. And again, this is in your handout, so I'm going to go through it really quickly. But these are some of the creative constraints that you can use as far as like certain notes or chord progressions, take songs and change them, etc. So I'm not going to talk through these one by one, but grab the handout if you would like to take these away and try them at your piano. And then finally, putting the pieces together. So we've been talking about creative playing, but that's part of a broader picture, and we've touched on some of these other ideas. So the number system, this idea of studying the patterns in music is an important part of it. Key fluency, being able to be confident in different keys, especially for a pianist, is really important. Ear training is a big part of it. And then for me, interest-based learning is also a really important part of it, because it's that motivation, that love of the music you're playing is what keeps students coming back to the piano every day. So I mentioned musical fluency, and to me it's really analogous with language fluency. We want to become so that, you know, what that barrier I mentioned earlier where you just, oh, I can't form the ideas I have in my head, right? We want to get past that. So the best way to do that is just by speaking music every day with other people, with recordings. You know, we want to, there's some great Victor Wooten talks about this if you haven't seen them. He really goes into it in a little bit more depth than I can do here. But anytime you have a question about how we should learn music, if you look at how we learn language, you'll find some clues and tips. And just to wrap it up, books and teachers can inspire. Hopefully I'm inspiring you a little bit. A lot of the books that I'm going to show you in a minute have inspired me deeply, as well as some of my teachers. But that true learning has to come from your own moments with the piano or your instrument. By finding sounds you love, learning how to make them. And it doesn't matter, this goes back to that practice one, it doesn't matter what order you put the pieces together in, just keep building the puzzle. So pick up the pieces that inspire you most each day. At the end, you will one day, although it is a never-ending journey, but keep building your puzzle. And then I also have some ideas for you around musical fluency, because I said I think it's highly related to creativity. I'm a big believer in learning the number system. You could also do solfege, learning chords as numbers, finding the tonic, etc. So again, I'm not going to go through these one by one, but they are in the packet. And if you have questions about what they mean, feel free to just email me and ask. So this is another picture of my sister and I. We did end up in a band together. This is the first band I was ever in. And we both kind of tried to overcome some of those early mindsets. I also recorded my own album, which is something I never thought I would do. She went back to graduate school, so and she still does music too. So just keep pushing out your mindsets. All right, these are several of the books that have inspired my thinking on these topics. And so I just wanted to showcase them for a minute. This is the Forrest Kinney book I mentioned, The Perfect Wrong Note. Improvise for Real is an amazing system. The Path of Least Resistance talks about that creative process. The music, Victor Wooten is a huge inspiration. The music lesson by him. Laws of Banjo. This is geared towards the banjo, but it talks a lot about neuroscience and the process of like retraining those neural networks that I mentioned. And I just love this book, The Listening Book, as well. And here's my email. Seriously, if you have questions about any of this, I'm happy for you to reach out to me. It's also in the handout. And I wanted to wrap up by saying thanks to my two mentors. So Tony was my piano teaching mentor. Eric was my guitar teacher that I mentioned. Tony's got a system called Popmatics. I'm actually working with him now on some really exciting stuff there. And I also teach at the Firehouse here in Alabama, which is a nonprofit that Eric started. So thanks to both of them. And if you're in Birmingham, check out the Firehouse. Anywhere else, if you're interested in creative learning, this is Tony, and we're, as I said, we're kind of trying to do some innovative new stuff with how we teach. Tony's been teaching this way for years. I was really excited to find him, and he inspired my own teaching, but now instead of just one-on-ones, he's offering some innovative group classes online and trying to teach not just creative piano, but in creative new ways. So if you want to learn more about that, go to popmatics.com. And actually right now we just started this brand new weekly chord challenge, the Sunday Record It. And this is open to anybody. You don't have to be part of the program. We're just for folks that love music, any ages, any levels. We're going to all pick a song each week to talk about. It's not a live thing. This is just all over Discord. And finally, since we've been talking about creative piano playing, I wanted to mention our improvisation challenge as well over at Popmatics. It's called the Campfire Challenge. And all of the piano music you heard in the background throughout this video is music that I improvised myself as part of this campfire challenge. If you're interested in either one of these, feel free to reach out to me over email. You can comment right here in YouTube or go onto Popmatics and book a free session. However you want to get a hold of us, we'd love to have you join us for either of these if you're interested. And either way, I wish you all the best in your piano journey. Thanks for watching.